The harbor lamps are low tonight. The wind is gentle on the water. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Last time, a young man named Telemachus sailed out of Ithaca in the dark with a goddess beside him to look for news of his father. Tonight, the ship comes to land, and he is welcomed into an old king's house and given food and told long old stories of the war. You do not need to follow the plot. You do not need to remember the names. You only need to rest. Book 3. As the sun was rising from the fair sea into the firmament of heaven to shed light on mortals and immortals, they reached Pylos, the city of Neleus. Now the people of Pylos were gathered on the seashore to offer sacrifice of black bulls to Neptune, lord of the earthquake. There were 9 guilds, with 500 men in each, and there were 9 bulls to each guild. As they were eating the inward meats and burning the thigh bones on the embers, in the name of Neptune, Telemachus and his crew arrived, furled their sails, brought their ship to anchor, and came ashore. Minerva led the way, and Telemachus followed her. Presently, she said softly, "Telemachus, you must not be shy or nervous. You have taken this voyage to try and find out where your father is and how it was with him in the end. So go straight up to Nestor, that we may see what he has to tell us. Ask him to speak the truth, and he will tell no lies, for he is an excellent person." "But how, Mentor?" said Telemachus. "Dare I go up to Nestor? How am I to speak to him? I have never yet held long conversations with people, and am ashamed to begin by questioning one who is so much older than myself." "Some things, Telemachus," answered Minerva quietly, "will be suggested to you by your own instinct, and heaven will prompt you further, for I am assured that the gods have been with you from the time of your birth until now." She went on, and Telemachus followed in her steps till they reached the place where the guilds of the Pylian people were gathered. There they found Nestor sitting with his sons, while his company round him was busy getting dinner ready and putting pieces of meat on the spits while other pieces were cooking. When they saw the strangers, they crowded round them, took them by the hand, and asked them to take their places. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, at once offered his hand to each of them and set them on some soft sheepskins that were lying on the sands near his father and his brother Thrasymedes. Then he gave them their portions of the inward meats and poured wine for them into a golden cup, handing it to Minerva first and greeting her at the same time. "Offer a prayer, sir," he said, "to King Neptune, for it is his feast that you are joining. When you have prayed and made your drink offering, pass the cup to your friend that he may do so also. I doubt not that he too lifts his hands in prayer, for man cannot live without God in the world. Still, he is younger than you are, and is much of an age with myself, so I will give you the precedence." As he spoke, he handed her the cup. Minerva thought it very right and proper of him to have given it to herself first. She began praying quietly to Neptune. "O thou," she said, "that encirclest the earth, grant the prayers of thy servants that call upon thee. More especially, send down thy grace on Nestor and on his sons. Thereafter, also make the rest of the Pylian people some handsome return for the goodly hecatomb they are offering you. And grant Telemachus and myself a happy issue in the matter that has brought us in our ship to Pylos." When she had made an end of praying, She handed the cup to Telemachus, and he prayed likewise. By and by, when the outer meats were roasted and had been taken off the spits, the carvers gave every man his portion, and they all made an excellent dinner. As soon as they had had enough to eat and drink, Nestor, knight of Geraint, began to speak. "Now," said he, "that our guests have had their dinner, it will be best to ask them who they are. Who then, strangers, are you, and from what port have you sailed? Are you traders, or do you sail the seas as rovers, with your hand against every man, and every man's hand against you?" Telemachus answered quietly, for Minerva had given him heart to speak. "Nestor," he said, "son of Neleus, honor to the Achaean name. You ask whence we come, and I will tell you. We come from Ithaca under Neritum, and the matter about which I would speak is of private, not public, concern. I seek news of my unhappy father Ulysses, who is said to have sacked the town of Troy in company with yourself. We know what fate befell each one of the other heroes who fought at Troy. But as for Ulysses, heaven has hidden from us the knowledge, even that he is dead at all, for no one can tell us where he perished, nor say whether he fell in battle on the mainland or was lost at sea among the waves. Therefore I am suppliant at your knees, if you may be pleased to tell me of his end, whether you saw it with your own eyes or heard it from some other traveler, for he was a man born to trouble. Do not soften things out of any pity for me, but tell me in all plainness exactly what you saw. If my father Ulysses ever did you loyal service, either by word or deed, when you Achaeans were harassed among the Trojans, bear it in mind now in my favor, and tell me truly all." "My friend," answered Nestor, "you recall a time of much sorrow to my mind, for the brave Achaeans suffered much both at sea, while privateering under Achilles, and when fighting before the great city of King Priam. Our best men, all of them fell there: Ajax, Achilles, Patroclus, peer of gods in council, and my own dear son Antilochus, a man singularly fleet of foot and in fight valiant. But we suffered much more than this. What mortal tongue could tell the whole story? Though you were to stay here and question me for 5 years, or even 6, I could not tell you all that the Achaeans suffered, and you would turn homeward, weary of my tale before it ended. 9 long years did we try every kind of stratagem, but the hand of heaven was against us. During all this time, there was no one who could compare with your father in subtlety. If indeed you are his son, I can hardly believe my eyes. And you talk just like him too. No one would say that people of such different ages could speak so much alike. He and I never had any kind of difference from first to last, neither in camp nor council, but in singleness of heart and purpose. We advised the Argives how all might be ordered for the best. When, however, we had sacked the city of Priam and were setting sail in our ships as heaven had dispersed us, then Jove saw fit to vex the Argives on their homeward voyage, for they had not all been either wise or understanding, and hence many came to a bad end through the displeasure of Jove's daughter Minerva, who brought about a quarrel between the 2 sons of Atreus. The sons of Atreus called a meeting, which was not as it should be, for it was sunset, and the Achaeans were heavy with wine. When they explained why they had called the people together, it seemed that Menelaus was for sailing homeward at once, and this displeased Agamemnon, who thought that we should wait till we had offered hecatombs to appease the anger of Minerva. So the two stood trading hard words, and the Achaeans rose to their feet and were of two minds as to what they should do. That night we rested and nursed our anger, for Jove was hatching mischief against us. But in the morning, some of us drew our ships into the water and put our goods with our women on board, while the rest, about half in number, stayed behind with Agamemnon. We, the other half, embarked and sailed, and the ships went well, for heaven had smoothed the sea. When we reached Tenedos, we offered sacrifices to the gods, for we were longing to get home. Cruel Jove, however, did not yet mean that we should do so, and raised a second quarrel, in the course of which some among us turned their ships back again and sailed away under Ulysses to make their peace with Agamemnon. But I, and all the ships that were with me, pressed forward, for I saw that trouble was brewing. The son of Tydeus went on also with me, and his crews with him. Later on, Menelaus joined us at Lesbos and found us making up our minds about our course. For we did not know whether to go outside Chios by the island of Syra, keeping this to our left, or inside Chios, over against the stormy headland of Mimas. So we asked heaven for a sign, and were shown one to the effect that we should be soonest out of danger if we headed our ships across the open sea to Euboea. This we therefore did, and a fair wind sprang up, which gave us a quick passage during the night to Gerestus, where we offered many sacrifices to Neptune for having helped us so far on our way. 4 days later, Diomed and his men stationed their ships in Argos, but I held on for Pylos, and the wind never fell light from the day when heaven first made it fair for me. Therefore, my dear young friend, I returned without hearing anything about the others. I know neither who got home safely, nor who were lost. But as in duty bound, I will give you without reserve the reports that have reached me since I have been here in my own house. They say the Myrmidons returned home safely under Achilles' son Neoptolemus. So also did the valiant son of Poias, Philoctetes. Idomeneus, again, lost no men at sea, and all his followers who escaped death in the field got safe home with him to Crete. No matter how far out of the world you live, you will have heard of Agamemnon and the bad end he came to at the hands of Aegisthus, and a heavy reckoning did Aegisthus presently pay. See what a good thing it is for a man to leave a son behind him, to do as Orestes did, who answered false Aegisthus, the murderer of his noble father. You too then, for you are a tall, smart-looking fellow, show your mettle and make yourself a name in story. Nestor, son of Neleus, answered Telemachus, honor to the Achaean name. The Achaeans applaud Orestes, and his name will live through all time, for he has avenged his father nobly. Would that heaven might grant me to do likewise to the insolence of the wicked suitors, who are ill-treating me and plotting my ruin. But the gods have no such happiness in store for me, and for my father, so we must bear it as best we may. My friend, said Nestor, now that you remind me, I remember to have heard that your mother has many suitors who are ill-disposed towards you and are making havoc of your estate. Do you submit to this tamely, or are public feeling and the voice of heaven against you? Who knows but that Ulysses may come back after all and pay these scoundrels in full, either single-handed or with the force of Achaeans behind him. If Minerva, were to take as great a liking to you as she did to Ulysses when we were fighting before Troy, for I never yet saw the gods so openly fond of anyone as Minerva then was of your father. If she would take as good care of you as she did of him, these wooers would soon, some of them, forget their wooing." Telemachus answered, "I can expect nothing of the kind. It would be far too much to hope for. I dare not let myself think of it. Even though the gods themselves willed it, no such good fortune could befall me." On this, Minerva said, "Telemachus, what are you talking about? Heaven has a long arm if it is minded to save a man. And if it were me, I should not care how much I suffered before getting home, provided I could be safe when I was once there. I would rather this than get home quickly and then be killed in my own house, as Agamemnon was, by the treachery of Aegisthus and his wife. Still, death is certain, and when a man's hour is come, not even the gods can save him, no matter how fond they are of him." "Mentor," answered Telemachus, "do not let us talk of it any more. There is no chance of my father's ever coming back. The gods have long since counseled his destruction. There is something else, however, about which I should like to ask Nestor, for he knows much more than anyone else. They say he has reigned for 3 generations, so that it is like talking to an immortal." And the old man, in the long evening light of Pylos, set his cup down quietly and looked a long while out over the sand to the sea before he spoke again. "You ask me of old things, my son," said Nestor softly, "and they come back to me more clearly than the voices of the men around this fire. When you spoke of my own son, Antilochus, just now, a door opened in my mind that I thought had long since been closed. Let me tell you a little more of him, while the evening is still long, and while my sons are quiet, and while the wine stands between us. It is an old man's privilege to tell old stories, and you, who never knew either my Antilochus nor your father in his best days, may as well hear them now, so that they do not go down to the ground with me." And so, in the evening light of Pylos, Nestor began to tell of the days before the fall of Troy, of the long year when Patroclus was killed, and of the quiet night, much later, when an old king came through the camp alone. "There was a time," said Nestor, "when the best of the Greeks gathered on the sand before the ships to make a funeral for Patroclus, who had fallen in battle in Achilles' own armor. He had been as dear to Achilles as any brother, and Achilles would not eat, nor drink, nor wash the dust from his face until the body had been given to the flames. So the Achaeans went up into the hills and brought down great logs of oak, straight ways and crooked, uphill and down dale, and laid them upon the shore at the place Achilles had chosen. There they built a pyre 100 feet this way and 100 feet that. They laid the body upon the top of it. They killed many sheep and many oxen, and set the fat of them all about the bier. They leaned 2-handled jars of honey and sweet oil against the bier, and on the top of all this, Achilles laid down his offerings, one by one. A yellow lock of his own hair that his father had vowed to a river he would never now see. 2 house dogs that Patroclus had loved, 4 proud horses, and the lamp of his own grief. The pyre would not kindle though, for the winds were far away, So Achilles prayed quietly to Boreas, who comes from the north, and to Zephyrus, who comes from the west, and promised them offerings if they would come and help him. The winds heard and rose and came across the sea. They fell upon the pyre, and the fire caught, and all night long the flames roared, and all night long Achilles walked beside the fire with a golden cup, and poured wine on the ground, and called softly on the name of his dead friend. As a father walks around the burning of his own young son, even so did Achilles walk around Patroclus, while the wind kept the fire going and the night kept the shore. When the morning star began to show, the winds went home across the Thracian sea, and the flames fell low. Achilles lay down on the sand at last and slept a little, for he was very tired. And when the sun was up, the Achaeans quenched the fire with red wine. They singled out the whitened bones of Patroclus, where they lay in the middle of the pyre. They laid them in a golden urn in 2 layers of fat. They covered the urn with a linen cloth and set it in Achilles' own tent. Then they marked off the circle of the barrow, and they heaped up the earth until a small hill stood upon the shore. A pyre, an urn, a barrow on the sand by the sea. After all of this was done, Achilles stayed the people and made them sit in assembly upon the sand. And he brought out prizes from his ships, cauldrons, tripods, horses, and mules, noble oxen, fair women, and iron. For it is the old Achaean way, after the burning, to hold games for the dead man, so that his spirit may see the best of the living, running and fighting in his honor. And the first games that day were the chariot races. Now, my son Antilochus was there among the drivers. He was young then, younger than you are now perhaps. He had the good horses of Pylos, which are sturdy, and know the road, but are not the fastest on the plain. I walked over to him before the race, and I gave him some advice, as a father will. I said to him, Antilochus, Jove and Neptune have loved you well, and have made you an excellent horseman. I need not say much by way of instruction. You are good at wheeling your horses round the post, but the horses themselves are slow, and this will, I fear, mar your chances. The other drivers know less than you do, but their horses are fleeter. Therefore, my dear son, see if you cannot hit upon some skill whereby you may keep the prize from slipping through your fingers. The woodman does more by skill than by brute force. By skill, the pilot guides his storm-tossed boat over the sea, and so by skill, one driver may beat another. There is a stump of a dead tree, I said, at the far end of the course, oak or pine as it may be, some 6 feet above the ground, not yet rotted away by rain. It stands at the fork of the road. There are 2 white stones set one on each side. It may have been a monument to someone long since dead, or it may have been used as a turning post in days gone by. Achilles has chosen it as the mark, round which the chariots must turn. Hug it as close as you can, my son. As you stand in your chariot, lean over a little to the left. Urge on your right-hand horse with voice, and give him loose rein. But let the left-hand horse keep so close in that the nave of your wheel shall almost graze the post. Mind the stone, though. Mind the stone, or you will hurt your horses and break your chariot in pieces. If you can be first to round the post, no one will overtake you. Not even if Adrestus's horse Arion were behind you, which is a horse of divine race. So keep your eye on the stump and on the man ahead, That was all I said to him. Then I sat down in my place on the sand. The drivers mounted their chariots and cast lots. Antilochus first, Eumelus second, Menelaus third, Meriones fourth, and Diomed, the best of them all, last. They took their places in line. Achilles showed them the doubling post, some way off on the plain, and stationed his father's old friend Phoenix beside it, to see the running and report truly. Then, all at once, they were off. They lashed their horses and shook the reins and called out with all their might, and the dust rose from the plain under the wheels as if it were a cloud. The manes flew in the wind. At one moment, the chariot seemed to touch the ground, and then again, they bounded into the air. Every driver stood straight in his chariot. Every heart beat fast, and the horses scoured the plain in the rising dust. I could not see every turn from where I sat. Old men cannot. But afterwards I was told how it all went, how Eumelus was thrown, and how Diomed took the lead with the dust rising high behind his wheels as fine golden snow, and how my Antilochus, finding the road narrow at one place and knowing his horses could not outrun the Atreids, drove so close behind Menelaus that Menelaus, fearing for his own wheels, eased a little. And so my Antilochus slipped past him on the inside, and so for a long stretch of the road he held that place, while Menelaus called to his horses behind him in the dust. Diomed came in first, far in front of all the others. Antilochus came in second, by skill alone, and third was Menelaus, who had nearly overtaken him again by the end. There was some small quarrel afterwards between the two of them, Menelaus and Antilochus, about the cornering, as is the way of men who have just been racing hard. But Antilochus spoke young and fair, and offered the mare he had won back to Menelaus, and said he had been wrong to crowd him. Menelaus smiled and forgave him at once, and let him keep the mare, for Menelaus's heart was always easily softened. And that was my Antilochus in his best hour, young and skillful, and quick to make a small wrong into a small right. He would grow older. He would go on fighting around those ships for another long year or more. And then he would fall himself, in fight valiant, as they say, saving another's life from a foreign spear, as the old tales tell. But for that one afternoon on the sand, with the dust of the wheels still hanging in the air, he was only a boy who had won himself a fine mare by his wits. There were more games that day: wrestling, boxing, the foot race, the throwing of the weight, archery too, at a dove tied to the mast of a ship. Every one of the heroes took a prize. But you do not need to hear all of that tonight. That is only what I think of when I hear my son's name spoken again after so long. A boy on a chariot in the dust, and his father on the sand, watching. Nestor was quiet for a while. The sea whispered on the beach of Pylos. The cups stood empty on the cloth. Pisistratus, beside his father, had his chin in his hand and was looking out at the water. After a time, Nestor drank a little wine, and he went on. "I will tell you one more old thing, my son," he said, "and then we will go up to the house for the night. For there was a night, some while after that day of the games, which some of us on the shore will not forget. This was the night. You will not have heard it truly, I think, for few would tell it to a boy, when old King Priam came alone, in the dark, to the tent of Achilles, to ransom his son's body. Hector had fallen, Hector, who was the shield of the Trojans. And for 11 days and 11 nights, Achilles would not give the body back, but dragged it behind his chariot in his grief, because Patroclus was still unavenged in his heart. At last, though, the gods took counsel, and they sent Iris, fleet as the wind, to the high walls of Troy, to tell old Priam to come down alone to the ships of the Achaeans, alone, with no company, but an old herald and a wagon of gifts, and ransom his son. And the gods sent Mercury, the slayer of Argus, to walk beside him through the dark of the camp, so that no man would see him, nor lay a hand on him as he came. So Priam went down in the dark in a wagon drawn by mules with all the treasure he had, 12 fine robes, 12 cloaks of single fold, 12 rugs, 12 fair mantles, an equal number of shirts, 10 talents of gold, 2 burnished tripods, 4 cauldrons, and a very beautiful cup, which the Thracians had once given him, which he loved above all his other cups, and which he did not grudge to give now. So much did he wish to have his son home. Mercury walked beside him through the sentries, and the sentries did not see them, for the god laid a heavy sleep upon them. And so Priam came through our watch and past our long lines of ships, right up to the tent of Achilles. There he found Achilles sitting with only 2 companions by him, Automedon and Alcimus, just finishing his supper. Priam went in quietly, without anyone seeing him, and went right up to Achilles and took hold of his knees and kissed the terrible hands that had laid so many of his sons down. Achilles was amazed, so were the others. And Priam spoke in the quiet tent, saying only this: "Think of your father Achilles, who was even such an old man as I am, on the sad threshold of old age. He hears that you are still alive, and his days are full of hope, that he may see his son come home to him from Troy. But I, wretched as I am, I had the bravest sons in all Troy, and not one of them is left. I had 50 sons when the Achaeans came here, and the greater part of them have fallen. And Hector, who was the last, and who was the guardian of the city and of ourselves, him you have lately slain. Therefore I am come to the ships of the Achaeans to ransom his body from you. Think on your own father, have compassion upon me, for I have done what no man yet has ever done. I have raised to my lips the hand of him who slew my son." And Achilles' heart turned inside him as he thought of his own father far away. He took Priam's hand and moved him gently back and set him on a seat. And the 2 of them wept together there in the tent for a long time, Priam for Hector, Achilles for his own father, and for Patroclus, until the tent was quiet with the weeping, and then quiet with no weeping at all. After a while, Achilles raised the old man up and spoke to him softly and said, "You must have iron courage, sir, to come here alone. Sit now, and let us hide our sorrows in our hearts for a little, for weeping will not help us. The gods spin a thread of sorrow for mortals, but we must bear it. Come, sit, and let us eat." Then Achilles went out and had his men wash the body of Hector away from Priam's eyes, and anoint it, and wrap it in a fair shirt and mantle, and lay it in the wagon. And he laid his hand on it gently, and asked Patroclus not to be angry with him for giving the body back, for the ransom was great. Then he came back into the tent and took his seat again. He killed a sheep of silvery whiteness. His followers made it ready and cut the meat and spitted it and drew it off the spits when it was well roasted. Automedon brought bread in baskets and served it round the table, while Achilles dealt out the meat. So Priam, who had not eaten in 11 days, and Achilles, who had not eaten either from sorrow, sat down together in that tent, on that shore, on that night, and took supper. And they marveled at one another across the table, Priam at Achilles' strength and youth, for he was beautiful as a god, and Achilles at the noble white-haired face of Priam, who had come so far, alone, through the dark. A sheep of silvery whiteness, bread in baskets, meat on the spits, wine in the cup, a tent on the sand by the sea. When they had gazed their fill, Priam spoke first. "And now, O king," he said, "take me to my couch, that we may lie down and enjoy the blessed boon of sleep. For my eyes have not closed from the day your hands took the life of my son. Until now, I have tasted nothing. Now, at last, I have eaten bread and drunk wine." Achilles told his men and the women servants to set beds in the room that was in the gatehouse, and to make them with good red rugs, and spread coverlets on the top of them, with woolen cloaks, for the old king and his herald to wear. So the maids went out, carrying a torch, and got the 2 beds ready. Achilles said, with a quiet smile, the first smile he had smiled in many days, "Dear sir, you shall lie outside, lest some counselor see you here in the darkness and tell it to Agamemnon. Lie in the forecourt. There will be rugs and cloaks enough." And he asked him how many days he wished to have for the funeral of Hector, so that the host might not make war in that time. Priam said, 9 days we will mourn him in my house. On the 10th we will bury him. On the 11th we will build the mound. And on the 12th, if it must be, we will fight again. And Achilles answered, "All shall be as you have said. I will stay our fighting for as long a time as you have named." Then Achilles laid his hand on the old man's wrist as a sign that he should have no fear. And so Priam and his herald lay down to rest in the forecourt of the tent on good red rugs with woolen cloaks over them, while Achilles himself slept in an inner room. And both gods and mortals were asleep through that whole night on the shore, except for Mercury, the slayer of Argus, who could not sleep, for he was still thinking of how to get the old king away before dawn. In the small hours, he came to Priam and woke him quietly. He yoked the mules and horses for him in the dark and drove them through the sleeping camp so that no man saw them. And at the ford of the eddying river, he turned back to high Olympus. And the dawn in her robe of saffron began to break over all the land. And Priam and his herald drove on to the city, with the body of Hector in the wagon behind them, lamenting quietly. Red rugs, a torch in the gatehouse, an old king asleep by the door of the man who had killed his son. This is an old story, my child, and this is what I think of when they speak of Achilles. Nestor stopped and drank again from his cup. Telemachus had said nothing for a long time. He had only listened. The sea whispered. The long beach of Pylos lay in the late light. The boys of the guilds were carrying away the bones of the bulls and putting out the fires one by one. But I go on, said Nestor at last, more briskly. These are old things, and the night is coming. Take my advice then, and do not go traveling about for long, so far from home, nor leave your property with such dangerous people in your house. They will eat up everything you have among them, and you will have been on a fool's errand. Still, I should advise you by all means to go and visit Menelaus, who has lately come off a voyage among such distant peoples as no man could ever hope to get back from, when the winds had once carried him so far out of his reckoning. Even birds cannot fly the distance in a 12-month. So vast and terrible are the seas that they must cross. Go to him therefore by sea, and take your own men with you. Or if you would rather travel by land, you can have a chariot, you can have horses. And here are my sons, who can escort you to Lacedaemon, where Menelaus lives. Ask him to speak the truth, and he will tell you no lies, for he is an excellent person. As he spoke, the sun set, and it came on dark, whereon Minerva said, Sir, all that you have said is well. Now, however, order the tongues of the victims to be cut, and mix wine that we may make drink offerings to Neptune and the other immortals, and then go to bed, for it is bedtime. People should go away early, and not keep late hours at a religious festival. Thus spoke the daughter of Jove, and they obeyed her, saying, Men's servants poured water over the hands of the guests, while pages filled the mixing bowls with wine and water, and handed it round, after giving every man his drink offering. Then they threw the tongues of the victims into the fire, and stood up to make their drink offerings. When they had made their offerings, and had drunk each as much as he was minded, Minerva and Telemachus were for going on board their ship. But Nestor caught them up at once and stayed them. Heaven and the immortal gods, he said, forbid that you should leave my house to go on board of a ship. Do you think I am so poor and short of clothes, or that I have so few cloaks as to be unable to find comfortable beds, both for myself and for my guests? Let me tell you, I have store both of rugs and cloaks, and shall not permit the son of my old friend Ulysses to camp down on the deck of a ship, not while I live, nor yet will my sons after me, but they will keep open house, as I have done. Then Minerva answered, Sir, you have spoken well, and it will be much better that Telemachus should do as you have said. He therefore shall return with you and sleep at your house. But I must go back to give orders to my crew and keep them in good heart. I am the only older person among them. The rest are all young men of Telemachus's own age who have taken this voyage out of friendship. So I must return to the ship and sleep there. And tomorrow I must go to the Cauconians, where I have a large sum of money long owing to me. As for Telemachus, now that he is your guest, send him to Lacedaemon in a chariot, and let one of your sons go with him. Be pleased also to provide him with your best and fleetest horses. When she had thus spoken, she flew away in the form of an eagle, and all wondered as they beheld it. Nestor was astonished, and took Telemachus by the hand. My friend, said he, I see that you're going to be a great hero some day, since the gods wait upon you thus while you are still so young. This can have been none other of those who dwell in heaven than Jove's daughter, the Trito-born, who showed such favor towards your brave father among the Argives. Holy Queen, he went on, vouchsafe to send down thy grace upon myself, my good wife, and my children. In return, I will offer you in sacrifice a broad-browed heifer of a year old, unbroken, and never yet brought by man under the yoke. I will gild her horns and will offer her up to you in sacrifice. Thus did he pray, and Minerva heard his prayer. He then led the way to his own house, followed by his sons and sons-in-law. When they had got there and had taken their places on the benches and seats, he mixed them a bowl of sweet wine that was 11 years old when the housekeeper took the lid off the jar that held it. As he mixed the wine, he prayed much and made drink offerings to Minerva, daughter of aegis-bearing Jove. Then, when they had made their drink offerings and had drunk each as much as he was minded, the others went home to bed each in his own abode. But Nestor put Telemachus to sleep in the room that was over the gateway, along with Pisistratus, who was the only unmarried son now left him. As for himself, he slept in an inner room of the house, with the queen his wife by his side. 11-year-old wine, a soft bed, in the house of an old king, quiet for the night. Now when the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, Nestor left his couch and took a seat on the benches of white and polished marble that stood in front of his house. Here aforetime sat Neleus, peer of gods in council, but he was now dead and had gone to the house of Hades. So Nestor sat in his seat, scepter in hand, as guardian of the public weal. His sons, as they left their rooms, gathered round him. Chaephron, Stratius, Perseus, Aretus, and Thrasymedes. The sixth son was Pisistratus, and when Telemachus joined them, they made him sit with them. Then Nestor spoke. My sons, he said, make haste to do as I shall bid you. I wish first and foremost to give thanks to the great goddess Minerva, who showed herself visibly to me during yesterday's festivities. Go then, one or other of you, to the plain. Tell the stockman to look me out a heifer, and come on here with it at once. Another must go to Telemachus' ship, and invite all the crew, leaving 2 men only in charge of the vessel. Someone else will run and fetch Laertius the goldsmith to gild the horns of the heifer. The rest, stay all of you where you are. Tell the maids in the house to prepare an excellent dinner and to fetch seats and logs of wood for a burnt offering. Tell them also to bring me some clear spring water. On this, they hurried off on their several errands. The heifer was brought in from the plain, and Telemachus' crew came from the ship. The goldsmith brought the anvil, hammer, and tongs with which he worked his gold, and Minerva herself came to accept the sacrifice. Nestor gave out the gold, and the smith gilded the horns of the heifer, that the goddess might have pleasure in their beauty. Then Stratius and Echephron brought her in by the horns. Aretus fetched water from the house in a ewer that had a flower pattern on it, and in his other hand he held a basket of barley meal. Thrasymedes stood by with an axe. Perseus held a bowl. Then Nestor began with washing his hands and sprinkling the barley meal. And he offered many a prayer to Minerva as he threw a lock from the heifer's head upon the fire. When they had done praying and sprinkling the barley meal, Thrasymedes made an end of the heifer. Then they cut her up, They cut out the thigh bones all in due course, wrapped them round in 2 layers of fat, and set some pieces of raw meat on the top of them. Then Nestor laid them upon the wood fire and poured wine over them, while the young men stood near him with 5-pronged spits in their hands. When the thighs were burned and they had tasted the inward meats, they cut the rest of the meat up small, put the pieces on the spits, and toasted them over the fire. Meanwhile, lovely Polycaste, Nestor's youngest daughter, washed Telemachus. When she had washed him and anointed him with oil, she brought him a fair mantle and shirt, and he looked like a god as he came from the bath and took his seat by the side of Nestor. When the outer meats were done, they drew them off the spits and sat down to dinner, where they were waited upon by worthy henchmen who kept pouring them out their wine in cups of gold. As soon as they had had enough to eat and drink, Nestor said, "Sons, put Telemachus's horses to the chariot, that he may start at once." They did even as he had said, and yoked the fleet horses to the chariot. The housekeeper packed them up a provision of bread, wine, and sweetmeats, fit for the sons of princes. Then Telemachus got into the chariot, while Pisistratus gathered up the reins and took his seat beside him. He set the horses on, and they moved forward into the open country, leaving the high citadel of Pylos behind them. All that day did they travel, swaying the yoke upon their necks, till the sun went down and darkness was over all the land. Then they reached Phyrae, where Diocles lived, who was son to Autolycus and grandson to Alpheus. Here they passed the night, and Diocles entertained them quietly. When the child of morning, rosy-fingered dawn, appeared, they again yoked their horses and drove out through the gateway under the echoing gatehouse. Pisistratus set the horses on, and they moved forward. Presently, they came to the cornlands of the open country, and in the course of time completed their journey. So well did their steeds take them. The cornlands, the open country, the wheels and the horses, and the quiet road. Now, when the sun had set and darkness was over the land, and so the third book ends. The chariot is still now, somewhere on a long road between Pylos and Lacedaemon. The horses are standing quietly. The boys are asleep under a cloak in the bed of the chariot, or in some small house by the roadside. The wheels have stopped turning. The night is large around them. The cornlands of Messenia lie all about, dark under the stars. The ears of ripe wheat and barley bend quietly under the small night wind. The road is only a pale line through them. There is no traveler on it tonight. Not now. Only the crickets and the low voice of the wind in the corn. Far behind them, on the long beach of Pylos, the fires of the hecatomb have burned down. The 9 altars are cold. The mixing bowls are stoppered. The 11-year-old wine is put away. And old Nestor is sleeping in his inner room, with the queen, his wife, beside him, and a single lamp burning low in the outer hall, where the sons' beds are quiet, and Pisistratus's bed is empty, because he is out upon the road with Telemachus. The house of an old king, closed for the night. And far ahead of them, beyond the next ridge of hills, beyond the long country they still have to cross, is the low city of Lacedaemon, with its lamps burning in the evening, and a king's house with a bronze door. But that is for tomorrow, not for tonight. Tonight, there is only the dark road and the dark cornlands and the quiet horses. And above it all, the same stars that were over Ithaca last night and will be over Sparta tomorrow night, and that do not hurry, and that do not mind where we are, and that keep the night for us, whether we are watching or not. The stars keep the night, the corn keeps the wind, the road keeps the travelers. There is nothing to do now, nothing to carry, nothing to remember. The old stories keep going whether or not we are listening. The fire on Patroclus's pyre, the dust of the chariots, the old king in the forecourt of the tent, the young men on the long road tonight. They have all been going for a long time. They will all be going for a long time still. We do not have to hold them. The cornlands are quiet. The road is quiet. The house of Nestor is quiet. The tent of Achilles, long gone to ash and memory, is quiet too, in its own way. And the night carries them all along without us. The story rests here. The music will stay with you through the night. There is nothing more you need to hear. Sleep.